Hiya. Today I'm meeting with Emma Shepherd of Let's Talk Disability. Thank you, Emma, for coming to join me on my usual Zoom chat that I'm doing virtually every week. It's really good to meet you, and I think it'd be good to actually start like I start with everyone and ask you how you got involved and what got you started in supported employment.
Okay. Yeah, lovely to meet you too. Gosh, my journey started many, many years ago, and I was living in Somerset at the time. My background is in HR, and I spent a number of years as an HR manager. And then I was working with adults with learning disabilities in day services at the time. And Somerset County Council was starting their first supported employment service called Aspire. So I was very, very happy doing what I was doing. They came round and said, "Look, we're starting a service, really interested in your background. Would you be interested in applying?" And they told me about what supported employment was. And I was just like, that is absolutely 100% makes sense to me. So I applied and then got given the job. And I remember being offered the job, sitting outside a theatre, about to go in with my two kids, and thinking, I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. So I go and rock the boat and go and change job. And I did, and I've never looked back.
What was the thing that has attracted you most about supported employment? And it's interesting because there's so many people I've interviewed who started off their life as being part of a day centre. And it's interesting how many people have jumped ship and became what I would call an employment consultant from there.
Oh gosh, 100%. Really, there was people in the day service there that really should not have been there. More than had the skills in order to be able to work. And Actually, that was one of the parts I did with Books Beyond Words. Glory Wants a Job, and the book that I helped with the co-design of it um, was about Glory, literally sitting in a day service. They go out in the obligatory bus, going for a journey. She sees somebody that she knows working in retail, and she's like, "Ah, that's the job that I want to do." And thankfully, she has like a really good key worker who says, "Yeah, totally understand, and let's look at it from a supported employment point of view." So that sort of story is very much emulated in the book that I was a part of. But I think it just made complete sense that there was a framework to support.
I'll go back later on to Books Beyond Words, but
Children.
was Gloria then your sort of first person that you worked with that you got a job for, or um,
No, no, Glory's the name of the character. Gosh, who was the first person? I still have people who I helped into employment from uh 15, 20 years ago. And they still keep in contact with me, but I don't actually remember.
it's a wonderful
Um,
buzz, though, isn't it? When you get a email, and I got an email from a mother recent, I say recently, about three or 4 years ago, about someone had worked for 20 odd years for Marks and Spencer and how well that had gone. And that gave me the greatest pleasure just to look at that email and think, yeah, I made a really good job match. And I got that
yeah,
person into a job, and it gave me a buzz. I'm sure is it the same for you?
absolutely. Yeah, totally. And it's really nice to hear that people are still working, and just makes me think about all of the steps that I went through, with them, and that individual's journey to get them to get them to that point. And I have some great memories. Yeah,
I hadn't met you until you arrived in Croydon,
yeah,
and I just wanted to, because you moved from Somerset and you came to the big bad city of London, and like Dick Whittington, you went to see if you could change things. So you changed things in Croydon, which hadn't been great on a municipality end, and you managed to get the job leading the employment service in Croydon. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because that's when our paths first crossed, and I think that was an interesting story in itself.
Yeah. So I came up to Croydon, and as you know, sort of supported employment is quite like a niche area. And I was very sad to leave Somerset. And I phoned up. Um, there was a local authority trading company, at the time, and I sort of said, look, I'm a supported employment practitioner. Do you have anything? And they did. And I went in as agency at the time. And then I was also doing some work with Bromley Mencat as well, just sort of doing, one day. And I did that, for quite a few months. But yeah, so I joined Croydon, and it was being run very, very differently at the time when I joined. It wasn't really being run like a supported employment service. So I kind of came in,
I
and I
certainly do
remember,
remember that.
yeah, it was like I remember doing a presentation right at the beginning about, what the kind of things that I would do. And I came up with, okay, so, at the time, traineeships were around, and it was about getting supported internships, and it was about the supported employment model. And I just came out with all of these things on day one. And yeah, that was my introduction to Croydon.
I think for me as a partner of Croydon, where we sort of decided it wasn't worth even trying to talk with them much because their understanding of supported employment wasn't there. It was quite nice to actually have someone there who started believing in it. And I think we actually then could work well in partnership together. And I think, I think back to one of the biggest things we did, and I wonder whether you could tell me a little bit of your perspective of the supported self-employment academy, which is still running today from
I
status.
love that. I love the fact that it's still running. Yeah, we've done so many projects together. Um, yes, so you and myself have always had like a real belief about self-employment as well. And sometimes I think it's somebody doesn't always, or an employment officer or an advisor, they don't always have confidence, I think, to know how to start with the self-employment, the framework of thinking about getting jobs has generally been at people's forefront. So I always had a belief about self-employment as well. So, meeting or doing this project with you with somebody who's really like-minded is very, very important. Um, and basically taking that support employment model and putting it around the self-employment framework was basically how it worked. And then obviously with our mutual friend Keith, and he's always been such an advocate of self-employment. And there was like so many things going on that it just worked out really well for us because we're both driven by the same principles and the same values.
I think also, I think it was a testament to you in being able to get the players in Croydon Council to actually believe in it. We could sell it as in this is a really good idea, but often getting the people to fund. And I think it was a testimony of we need to try and get this funded one way or another. And it was the first one in Croydon that had any employment focus that was funded by direct payments. And I always think it's a shame that it never goes on, and direct payments is a way of funding things, but councils don't look at it as much as they could do. It's a bit clunky for me as a chief exec of a charity, but actually it did mean that we got this first cohort off the ground. And it's really good that to see that some of the people that are working there have started their own businesses and are still operating today. We started that in 2017, I believe.
Yeah. I remember sort of, sitting in the interview room or the room that we were meeting people. And, I remember just being, or we were sort of so blown away with the amazing ideas that people had. It was absolutely fantastic. Things really had never even thought about. And, I remember, one chap who was wanting to do something about Ottoman history. And I remember turning to you and I went, what's Ottoman history? I mean, I really had no idea. And and then about the doleful autistic young children, think there was like a bling lock, handbags, like but so many
My
really
my
good
particular
ideas.
favourite was the young lady who was very shy, who never said a word to anyone in the beginning, and we'd managed to sort of pair her with a wedding planner, and she was a flower arranger, and at the end, and she was wonderful. This wedding planner, she gave her a time to test trade, and
Mm,
always shows you that employers are on your side if you can
yeah.
sell the right way to employers. And she allowed this young woman to test trade. And in other words, it was on Valentine's Day and on Mother's Day. And
Mm,
anyway, she had a week before Valentine's Day to prepare all the flowers. He gave her credit, which was wonderful. She actually risked her money on the young woman and said, if you make a profit, you can keep the profit and you're not to make a loss. And it
mm,
was very, very, and even though she was said it, she was smiling and she knew that she was risking some of her money. And I thought that was great. But at the end of the Valentine's Day, she made a number of bouquets, which were brilliant. And she'd done both artificial ones and real ones, but she had about three real ones. And the wedding planner woman said, well, what are you going to do? You're going to have to get out on that pavement and you're going to have to sell those to people passing by. And the young woman went out and she was having to sell those bouquets to every random man and woman walking on the street in Croydon. She was so
mm.
pleased because she managed to boost her confidence, go out there and sell them. And she was buzzing the next week when she
Yeah,
came into class, and she had said, I've got so much to tell you. I went out to sell bouquets on the streets of Croydon. I think she made in the test trading, she made something in the region of £250 worth of profit.
that's
And
brilliant.
that, I mean, it
I
was a
think I think
brilliant.
there's a belief. There's a belief there, that lady believed she could go out and sell it. I think we believed that these people were able to, like have their own business. The commissioners, believed in what we were saying. So, you know, there's there's been a lot of like hard work behind it, and I spent a number of years proving my credibility. And again, I think because of the framework, the supported employment framework was there, which does actually give results. Um, because I used it and was experienced in what I was doing, I was also given quite a lot of free rein to do the things that I wanted to do. And I'm quite creative as a person. So I would get bored if I was just doing the same job day in, day out. So because I had like creative ideas, and I was, believed in, myself, so that my manager literally would give me free rein and I produced results. The commissioners then, believed in it. We had results of the things that we done and people believed in it. And I think that's been
I think there's
why we've been
the word
successful.
believe, I think, is really important. I think it moves neatly into something else that you set up and started in Croydon. And I talk a lot about raising aspirations, and I think a lot of people in
Mm,
our sector talk about raising aspirations. And I think, what you were talking about that in the self-employment, but you started with supported internships, which I think is a real beginning of trying to raise aspirations, although I think raising aspirations should be done with young people at the age of 14. And I think raising aspirations and starting that supported internship with Croydon was another one of your projects that you started and actually had some real success with until Croydon's financial problems.
mm. Yeah, I mean, it took me 4 years of talking with the council to actually get those up and running. And because I really believed in it, and I really wanted to do it. And I kind of think that the council had to put their money where their mouth was. And I remember having so many conversations. I remember writing business plans and it having to go to various meetings. And then I'd have a few comments of like, well, actually having like disabled people like working here. And I'm like, yes. and they haven't really got any experience. And I'm like, yes. So it took a long time, but the results evidently worked. And the council took on some of those interns, and we had a really super chap who, unless he had done that supported internship, probably would have had real difficulty in working, because on top of I think his learning disabilities and neurodiversity, he also had narcolepsy and would often be falling asleep literally at his desk. And they really believed in him, and they did offer him a job.
Hmm.
It was fantastic. And there was so many hurdles to go through. I mean, to start a supported internship program, literally from writing it down on a piece of paper and all of the things that it involved. Um, yeah, I was proud of that one.
Yeah, I think some people ask me about, running a charity for supported employment and what the skills you need. And I say, well, one of the skills you need is tenacity. You need, often you have an idea and it's a good idea, but it might take you 8 years or 9 years to get it funded. And you need
Yeah,
that tenacity, you need that sort of flexibility, and you need to be innovative. Certainly on the charity side, you need to be constantly looking at how you can actually help people and move people onwards. Um,
because there
one
was
of
a manager with the NHS actually. So obviously, as the time went on, I wanted to move it not just within the council but within other organisations. And one of the sort of HR or managers from the NHS actually said, "I've actually given you your own inbox." He says, because nobody has managed to get like illicit answers from me in the way that you have, because I just didn't forget it. Do you know what I mean? I kept going back to him and back to him and back to him, and he's like, "Oh my God, you actually worn me down to the point where I'm ready to do this."
it's good. Actually, the bit of wearing people down in a nice way is moves me
Yeah,
on
in a
to
nice way.
another area where I think is one of your greatest achievements in the making Croydon and many of the businesses who followed your lead in it in disability confident, and I think that was one of the areas it really, really helped in moving forward Croydon in that period of time to be disability confident and bring all the providers on board. And it'd be good to hear about some of your journeys as regards that.
Yeah, so I set up the Disability Confident Action Group. Um, and it started by doing one event. And I think somebody had asked my opinion, because obviously I have a disability too. So I was asked my opinion. So, and it's like, okay, well, like, let's not do something to people. Let's get people's input themselves. So let's do an event and have lots of disabled people there and lots of employers. And as you say, raising aspirations. So there was another event, when we did have, parents and carers and schools and colleges, social workers, employers, literally sitting round one table. But I did this under the Disability Confident banner. Um, and it was well before the guise that it currently is in. It was back at the time where pledges were being written. And I did an event, and I think we had something like over 50 employers, which is a really difficult thing to do, to get employers to come
Oh,
to
it's
events.
massively hard, but really important to try.
Yeah. And I love networking. And I think it was all through my networking that I managed to get all of these people literally together, under, the same roof, with the same kind of narrative in the conversation. And, other DWPs or local job centres were then emulating what we had actually done. But it really was, like through networking and by having those creative ideas that we set up the Disability Confident Action Group at the time. So that group was different. providers, different supported employment providers, having counsellors there, having training providers, parents, um, and I can't remember who else was there, but basically, we had people like literally sitting around the table. And to make it a bit more strategic, I took I think it was the 2017 white paper on improving lives. Um, and it had an action plan in it about what they wanted to do. So what I did was align and having our own action plan, aligning it to what that government white paper was at the time. And from that, that's when we did a number of events, and including the reverse jobs fair. And I remember sitting at the DCAG, the
Would
Disability
you like to
Confident
just
Action Group.
explain to many people, because they'll not understand this, is what a reverse job fair is?
Yes, so I'm actually talking about it at the base conference in November, because I was doing them back in 2016. So I think I was like literally one of the first in the country to deliver it after the MP Mark Harper did one. I remember reading about it and I went, that's a brilliant idea. I'm going to do it. So it took a traditional recruitment jobs fair where all the job seekers would go in and, all the employers would have their own stands. They're busy, they're noisy, they're intimidating, flipped it on its head so that the candidates would have their own stand, and they can have a banner or whatever it is behind them, which talks about themselves, the skills, etc., that they've got, much in the same way as the employers would have, talking about their business. And then bringing the employers in, and essentially getting, them to do the hard work. They have to go up to the table and introduce themselves. And, they were quite nervous about doing all of that.
Oh, I remember
And
meeting one employee when he came in. He said, my knees are shaking. I said, don't worry, this will be fine. And by the time he'd finished, he came back to me and said, oh, that was fantastic. It was really good. I really enjoyed meeting all those new people. And it was just changing the attitude. And it showed to employees how nerve-wracking it is just going round to talk to
mm,
people.
yeah, we did quite a few of those events.
I
And
remember four or five at least.
yeah, yeah. And they changed sort of slightly over time. And, from where I started with DWP saying to me, nah, it's a bit maverick, this. And, they didn't put any candidates forward. Um, and it was like, I remember thinking, I'm going to make sure that this event works. I will prove to them
I
that
think
this
from
works.
Status's point of view, we nearly always got a job from it. We made many, many partnerships with employers from it, and we made good partnerships with other potential partners and educators, and they were tremendous for us as an agency. So I can't recommend reverse job fairs highly enough as an agency, and I think for the
Well, the
employers,
DWP actually completely ran the last one.
yeah,
It was a complete change over time where they didn't want to know. It was too
yeah.
maverick, all the way to their employers, their staff, people turning up, and they really bought into it.
It's one of those things I think, Emma, is if people want to know, they need to sort of talk with you as regards how that actually happens because I've seen them when they've been run well, and I think you've learnt how to run them really well, things to do and things not to do. And I think when it's run well, it's a really, really positive area for both candidates and employers, and it's something that is should be in the armory of supported employment agencies to be able to get jobs for their candidates. And I think it should be in the armory of nearly all councils to actually see if they can actually run these.
Yeah, they're easy to do. And as I say, I will be doing a workshop on it shortly.
Okay, so anyone coming to the base conference, let's talk about Emma, let's talk about disability, reverse job fairs. I might come in to heckle you because I like heckling you.
Yeah, I'm doing it with a really lovely lady called Chloe Foran from Liverpool, County Council, and they do reverse jobs fairs as well. So yeah, very
Brilliant.
much looking forward to it.
I've now mentioned let's talk disability. So when you left Croydon, you moved on and you now have your own company. Let's talk disability, and I get these regular newsletters and all these exciting things that you're doing all the time. So I just wonder whether you can explain to everyone what you're doing now in that furtherance of supported employment and your connections with the British Association of Supported Employment and Inclusive Trading, which I'm a director of, so I'm very interested in, obviously.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, I do outsourced diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging services for organisation. So I took the work that I was doing with my employer engagement and ran with it because I really enjoyed working with employers. So essentially, I do that as an outsourced service, but I specialise in disability and mental health. So whether that is to deliver some training. Um, Very excited about a new program that is starting called Axiom. It's a leadership program for disabled staff. It's over 5 months, and starting that off very shortly. Also about doing consultancy. So it's about I can go into an organization, look at any sort of issues, and being able to do sort of a deep dive into it and coming out with an action plan. And then auditing people's, policies and their practices and things to see, what they're working with, what they can do to improve it. Um, as you say, I still do a lot of work with base and inclusive trading, and I do that as an associate. So, been doing some supported employment quality framework audits. There's the SEQF, hopefully soon the supported employment quality assurance framework, so the SIQF as well, and then also delivering training.
Which brings me on to an area that we got some exciting news, and I think I looked at it and it's always frightening when I look at this, but we have over 50 years collectively of experience within supported employment, being employment consultants, running municipalities, running our own businesses, changing ideas for people, running charities. And we think that, I think both of us think that that experience is something that could be very, very useful to many, many people. So we've worked well together for a number of years since you came to Croydon.
Yes. Mm.
Probably 10 of those years now, I'd imagine. And we're looking within status employment and let's talk disability to be looking at a number of training courses that we feel that the sector, not just in supported employment, but around sort of disability and also how charities operate, would be interested in. So one of the areas that we want to be able to do is just that basics around how you actually start a supported employment agent, how you become a good supported employment person.
Yeah. Yeah, no, very much looking forward to that. As I say, we've got so many ideas about the training that we are going to deliver. Don't forget, we are going to be delivering our book as well, which we're starting to write. Um, that might take a little while, but we are working on that as well. So, yeah, all of the work, we can work with employers, we can work with supported employment, practitioners. And as you say, I think we've got a wealth of experience that comes from, my HR background, the work that we've both done working, with learning disabilities, neurodivergent,
Mental
um,
health.
mental health, running businesses. So all of this kind of put together and, the mentoring and the coaching that we also are able to do.
I think anyone
makes up
who's
for a very neat
looking at
package.
starting a supported employment business and wants to look at having the basics for their staff, but also how they actually develop their supported employment agencies. We've been talking today about the work that we have done together around the supported self-employment, but there are areas that we have done and I've done around, having our own football team, having drama, and people say, what's that connection to do with employment? Well, it actually helps people find more jobs, and it's how we actually develop our agencies to be making sure that we have the social model of disability at the heart of it and the candidates at the heart of it, but how we can actually operate and how we can make sure that we are working in the right way. And between, as I said, we've got over 50 years experience, not only in the UK, but across Europe and even as far as the world, I can safely say, in actually working with organizations in Malaysia and also in Chile and elsewhere.
Yeah, I was in those projects as well with you. And I remember getting emails from Hawaii, at one point asking about the reverse jobs fairs and how on earth they heard about it out there. I have no idea, but they tracked me down. Um, yeah, I love that.
And so I think we, keep an eye on, and we'll put a link at the bottom of this video, but keep an eye on the training that we're going to be
Mm,
offering. And it's there to actually help people. We want, and my wish is really to be pushing that business of actually getting more people with disabilities into proper open employment. And I know that's something that you want to do as well.
yeah, it comes back to the belief. Yeah, absolutely believe 100% that, it's possible to do.
Yeah, it comes back to when I spoke to someone in doing self-employment, and one of the biggest things I get from the self-employment is it is so nice that we come into an organization that believes in us. And if someone believes in us, then we can actually put all the other things together. And I think that's the major thing about this is that, you know, I believe that lots and lots of organizations can help more people with disabilities find employment. And I think between us, we are happy to be able to see if we can share our experiences.
Absolutely, yes.
So, Emma, thank you so much for your time today. And I'll be speaking to you soon. And I promise you, I'll come to heckle you at the base conference.
Thank you. But as long as you can fix all the video and Scott leads as well, that would be fine. Heckle away.
Yeah, okay. I look
Thanks,
forward to
Robert.
it. Thank you, Emma. Bye
Cheers.
bye.